Hey, welcome to Critical Q&A, our live stream edition. Let me make sure all is well here. There we are. All right. So, yeah, we're doing a special Saturday show. Things have been a little wild and a little crazy on the channel lately, I know, in terms of scheduling stuff. My life has not necessarily been completely my own recently with all the real world work that I've been doing in with consulting and some other stuff. And so schedules have just been kind of a little random lately, and I apologize for any inconveniences or confusions about all of this. I wanted to let y'all know that it's looking very good, very green light for Alex, Apostate Alex and I to get together tomorrow and record an After Scientology Straight Up and Vertical show for this week. I didn't think that we were going to be able to do that because Tony and I were crossing paths, logistically again, right, travel-wise. But Alex said, "Hey, I could be part of that," and I was like, "Yeah." So we're gonna record that tomorrow and post that on Monday. Let's go ahead and get over to the chat box here and get that up on the screen. There we go. Okay, good. Higher reality than actual reality. That's right. Excellent, guys. Thanks for coming around. I see the usual suspects and critics in the comments here. Very happy to see you here. And, let's get the chat set up so you can start throwing questions at me. I should probably set that up before we get the show started, but I always kind of enjoy doing it while we're going. Ask me anything below this comment here. All right, start Q&A. All right, so now I'm looking at the Q&A box here as we do each week, and so if you put your questions specifically under the comment that I just posted, ask me anything below this comment here, then I will see them and can start throwing them up on the screen and answering them. This is, after all, a Q&A show. I will let you guys know that I have been hot and heavy on the tone scale video work, sweating bullets. You know, I always wait till the last damn minute on stuff, and I wish I wouldn't do that to myself, but I do. And so it's been really stressful the last week or two. I've been getting this whole thing done. I've basically put together a slideshow, sort of this massive PowerPoint that I'm going to walk you all through with some videos and stuff like that on it. And I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Anyway, again, that'll be Thursday, this coming up Thursday at 1 o'clock Denver time, Mountain Time. I will be going live, unless... I don't know, unless, my cold dead hand can't hit the live button for some reason on Thursday. We are doing it, and I am very, very excited because I have a schedule this year that I am very intent on following, and so far it's been happening. So just to remind everybody, this Thursday, the February 29th, will be this tone scale video, and what is it? It's January, February, March, April. Very good, Chris. At the end of April is the metering video. And that's when that's happening. Again, come hell or high water, I am determined to have that completed and present that to you so that we can talk about the Scientology e-meter, debunk it, get it out of the way, tell you guys all about what it is, how it works, show you how it works in Scientology. In auditing sessions, in security checking, confessionals, all of that. I intend on putting stuff together to show that to you guys. And I think that's going to be awesome. And with those two projects completed, that'll be it for Scientology related content for me as a dedicated activity. I will be still talking about Scientology, of course, going on other people's channels and collaborating with people about Scientology or talking about my experiences with it. I'm never going to stop doing that. But as far as dedicated content on this channel, breaking down Scientology principles and the tech and all that kind of stuff, we're going to be done. I am going to keep, of course, the weekly show with Tony, so we keep in the loop on what's going on with Scientology on a weekly basis in terms of the news about it. But that's my plan. So I am really, really excited about all of this. And as you've seen in my podcast recently as well, speaking of cults podcast and even the Friday shows, we've been really going way beyond Scientology related stuff. Now, not last night. I want to tell everybody I really liked last night's show on ideal orgs and Scientology expansion, and sort of talking historically and sort of from a mile high, view of Scientology. We really went into some stuff last night that I think kind of showed why it is that the Church of Scientology is really on its way out, and there isn't anything that's going to turn that ship around or right that boat or correct that course. It's the Titanic. It's sinking. It's on its way down, and we're just kind of all sitting here watching it happen, and that's really good news. All right, so that all being said, let's... Yes, young Matador, you are allowed alcohol watching this. All right, so let's go ahead and start taking up some of your questions here. And the first one is an interesting one. This is a really convoluted subject in Scientology, the genetic entity. Oh boy, people in Scientology are so confused by this concept and what it is. And I'm going to give you my best interpretation of my understanding of it. And I will let you know that I spent hours and hours. I remember very clearly my time in Scientology. And even when I remember this most specifically when I was on the RPF, I spent a whole morning, I spent days actually, going through the L. Ron Hubbard lectures from the 1951-52 time period. That time period has some of the wildest, most insanely imaginative stuff that Hubbard ever came up with for Scientology was that time period. That's when he really started exploring or talking about the thetan. And what is it? How does it relate to bodies? How does it run a body? How does it actually do it? And Hubbard talked about energy flows and tractor beams and pressor beams and how the thetan would use these energy beams to control the body. But one of the other concepts that comes out of that time period and was a rather convoluted concept that people had a really hard time getting their wits around for years was the genetic entity. And the way Hubbard describes it is he says that you are a composite being. You right now are not just a thetan. You are a thetan with a mind inhabiting a body. And inside that body are these entities. And this was now back in 51, 52 time period with History of Man and these kind of books. Hubbard wasn't yet talking about body thetans. That comes much later with the whole Xenu story. But a very similar concept of living entity or beings, not necessarily organisms, we're not talking about like your microbiome or something. We're not talking about like bacteria or viruses or things that legit live in your body. We're talking here about spiritual components or sort of non-physical entities. And Hubbard made various references to this, most especially in History of Man and some of the lectures from that time. And he talked about how there are these parallel lines of development where the thetan, you, me as a spiritual entity, are going from body line to body line, right? But there are body lines. There's the development of a body, a familial line, right? You and somebody else get together and you have a baby, and that baby goes and gets together, grows up and gets together with somebody and they have a baby, and on it goes. That reproductive line is what's called a genetic line. In Scientology, Hubbard talks about this as a genetic line. The protoplasm, the DNA, everything kind of moving through time, life after life after life. There's this continuing stream of life. And that is controlled by or is managed and operated by this other semi-spiritual sort of living entity called the genetic entity. or the GE. And it's a strange kind of concept. It's the idea basically is that this is sort of the aspect or part of life, this genetic entity, is sort of the will or the intent or the causative element or agent, the living element of evolution, of an evolutionary development of bodies moving along, evolving over time, this kind of thing. The genetic entity is sort of this thing that oversees this and manages the process at a biological, physical level. And I know this is very bizarre sounding and that it's not necessarily easy to understand or get your wits around for a lot of people. And so I'm doing my level best here to explain this simply. But that's basically the concept of the GE. It is not something that is the same thing as a thetan. You could consider it a sort of more primitive, lower kind of life or manifestation of theta, if you will. It's not a full-blown, self-aware spiritual entity like a thetan is. It's kind of a lesser version of a thetan in a way, but it's not like it's a devolved thetan or an unconscious thetan or a thetan that's been demoted. That's not what a GE is. A GE has always been a GE, and it depends for its existence on the fact that bodies exist. And it only exists to cater to that genetic line of bodies. And the thetan can confuse the genetic entity and its impulses and drives and desires for the thetan's own impulses, drives, and desires. And this can become confusing for the thetan because it starts thinking the body is the thetan, right? The thetan can get confused by this. And that's where there's a similarity between what the GE is and what it's doing and body thetans and what they're doing. Because the thetan running the body, this composite being of thetan, body, GE, BTs, mind, all this stuff glommed together is your normal, regular human being, according to L. Ron Hubbard. Okay, I hope all of that makes sense, because that's the best answer I've got for that. So feel free to ask me anything more about that, but that's what I can tell you about that one. Okay, let us move on here, and we have... Okay, Xen also asks, what kinds of abilities did we have, according to L. Ron Hubbard, as thetans in the past? Great question. Basically, thetans in Scientology, and I don't know that it's entirely coincidental, by the way, that it rhymes so closely with Satan. But thetans are the core aspect of life, the thing that makes life life is theta, this life energy. And thetans are individual aspects or manifestations of theta as self-aware living entities or units, right? That's a thetan. You're a thetan, I'm a thetan. We just have bodies. We control and run bodies, but this body that you're carrying around with you right now is not who you really are, according to Hubbard. All right. So what can thetans do? Well, it just so happens that, again, 1951, 52, 53 time period, Hubbard was all about let's categorize and figure out and quantify and measure and do whatever else we can do to talk about thetans and what they're all about. And thetans have a limitless, endless potential for creation and destruction of matter, energy, space, and time in any form, any way, any place, anywhere, right? Anything a thetan wants to create or do, basically it can. At least at some point in the past, it was able to. This is what we call native state for a thetan, is back when they were just little living beings who hadn't yet been corrupted by, this vast physical universe of matter, energy, space, and time. And and I continually am harping, I'm using all the Scientology terminology here and answering this, of course, right? In modern scientific terminology, we would actually be discussing these things in very different terms, because like space-time, for example, is kind of figured out as the same thing now. It's a very different concept than when Hubbard was around, where space was space and time was time, and they really didn't have much to do with each other, or they weren't as connected as we now understand them to be. So so it's kind of interesting, you know, that I have to keep going back to the Scientology archaic concepts of this stuff. This is not how modern science thinks about this, but as far as abilities go, thetans can create anything. You want to make up a planet and play marbles with it, right? You want to throw Jupiter around out of orbit and crash it into Mars or something? Go right ahead. Thetans can do that, right? It's nothing. It's nothing for a thetan to do that. The entire infinite, vast, you know, complex of stars and black holes and planets and galaxies and universes that is the physical universe is just a playground for a thetan. And so, you know, ripping the air cover off a planet, no big deal, right? Boom, it's done. Ignite the air cover of a planet to commit genocide, right? Boom, no problem, easy. Play around in the sun. Go hang around in the core of the sun for a day or two. Yeah, easy. No big deal, right? Because a thetan is not a physical thing. It exists inside the physical universe wherever it considers itself to be. It doesn't really have a location. It just flits about to wherever it wants to be aware of being. So, yeah, it's a very magical being, the thetan is. It's the ultimate unicorn. You can do anything with it. So that's kind of the answer on that one. Is really the answer is anything, and everything and anything you can imagine, including creating matter, energy, space, and time out of whole cloth, out of nothing. Now, there's an interesting thing, just to comment on this real fast. One thing Hubbard never touched was time travel. Really never got into it. I don't recall. Maybe there's lectures where he dropped some comments about it that I didn't hear. But time travel is not a thing in Scientology. And I find that fascinating, given the fact that an OT, an operating thetan, is defined in Scientology as a being who is at knowing and willing cause over matter, energy, space, time, life, and form. Time is part of that equation of what a thetan is supposed to be cause over. So theoretically speaking, a thetan should be able to move up and down the time track in the universe here, move up and down other people's time track as well, because time's just a consideration, right? According to Hubbard. So moving in time shouldn't really be any more of a challenge to a thetan than moving through space or matter or energy. But Hubbard never really got into that. And I just thought I'd comment on that, because of all the abilities a thetan should have, I think those should be one of them, but Hubbard didn't talk about that. And I don't know why, except of course for the fact that you start talking about time travel and most people's, heads turn into pretzels really fast, because it's really complicated stuff. And I don't know that Hubbard ever really wanted to tackle that as such, or all of the complications and, consequences of doing that. You start telling people they can time travel, and altering the past or altering the future before it's even happened. I mean, what? But theoretically, again, according to the words Hubbard said, should be possible, shouldn't it? I mean, I don't think I'm out to lunch on that. Anyway, so there's the answer to that question for you, Xion. Great question. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. I can pull that down. Okay. Young Matador. Hey, Chris, with your experience, can you describe the flap that will occur when the Austin Ideal Org is being designed for an opening weekend? Thanks. I'm not totally sure I understand your question, Young Matador, but let me give it a shot. Let me give it my best shot here at understanding what I think you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're asking me about is basically like how crazy is it going to be on the ground in Austin because of this opening today? I think the opening is today, right, for the Ideal Org in Austin, and it's going to be confusion central down there. I mean, they're going to have especially if Miscavige is present to do the opening. You're going to have security. You're going to have however many number of staff they have, which is not a full complement as I understand it. You're going to have, whatever problems with process servers having to be kept away or security having to do their whole drill to keep Miscavige safe and keep all the looky-loos away. It's a very weird thing Scientology does with their grand openings of their orgs because they want to make it look like the entire community is coming out to celebrate with bated breath. They've all been waiting for this org to open so that their community can be, educated and informed and take part in these wonderful services that Scientology has got ready for them. But that's not really the case. The Scientology org neighbors don't give a shit about Scientology and don't really want them around. And, most people understand Scientology is pretty toxic stuff. So they have to create this image of all these people showing up and celebrating this opening while at the same time hiding the fact that they're actually gating off and walling off this whole event and don't want anybody anywhere near it who they are not in control of. So the entire opening day drill, you could say, or the purpose of the main thing they're working on in the activity is controlling everything that's going on, which is really hard to do when you got a few hundreds of people on the street there and it's a public avenue and venue and all of that. So there's going to be all kinds of tense teeth gnashing and a lot of having to do with all of that, as well as wrangling the city officials or whatever government opinion leaders they got to, convince to come talk, to keep everybody in line to go into the building and control the flow of traffic through the building. This is your opening day, activity. And Miscavige's schedule when he's on site there for this stuff is pretty tailored down to the minute. They have photos ops with all of the local whales and with the dignitaries and government officials. Miscavige gets to do FaceTime with all of them and glad handing and get lots of photographs. And then they want to validate all the local people who pushed all the money into the thing to make it happen. So Miscavige does some meet and greets with those guys, and it's that kind of thing, right? It's sort of how it goes. And of course, yes, as Mrs. J says here, right? Of course, they will be bringing in lots of people from out of town to make it look like there are many, many more Scientologists in that area in Austin who are, so happy that the church is opening. Probably somewhere on the order of 50 to 70% of the people you're going to see in those photographs aren't from Austin. That's a guess off the top of my head, but based on my experience in Twin Cities and Vegas and Portland and all the other openings I've been to, kind of works out that way, right? There are Scientologists. There are some really dedicated Scientologists all over the United States who have made it their mission to fly and be part of every Ideal Org opening. They've been at every one of them. And so they all show up, and then they bring in their, the OT committee people and all the other folks they can wrangle up in there. So as much as possible, they want to make it a big, grand opening and lively affair, but they want to control it within an inch of its life as well. And that's kind of what I can say about that. But again, if I missed anything or there's more that you're wondering about on that, go ahead and ask me. Okay, Jehovah's Witness, and make sure, guys, that you're getting your questions in the question box under my comment there, because this is the last one I've got in the queue right now. Jehovah's Witness apostate. I love the way you change your name around every year. This is great. When Scientology loses its tax exemption, do you think that Bridge Publications will have to cut back its book production? That's an interesting question. Let me think about that one. I mean, yeah, but, See, the thing about Bridge Publications, I guess the reason I kind of go, because I worked at Bridge for about 9 months making books. Saw the whole operation from the inside. And it's really quite something. They have a building in, where is it? Compton or somewhere around there in California. They have this facility that is like 3 football fields in size. I mean, the thing is huge. It's this gigantic building. And it's divided into 3 parts. And book storage is the third inventory, management, that racks and racks and racks of boxes of books and e-meters and CDs and stuff like that. Then there's the production area, which is the middle division of this great big building. And that is printing presses and color presses and cover presses and bindings and all the stuff you need to create books. And then the front section is the bulk of the Bridge staff, the sales force and the executives and all the staff and everybody. And they work kind of up in the front. So out of this facility come hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of Scientology publications on a regular basis. But who's consuming them? Nobody. I mean, really, legit. I mean it. Nobody. All the books that they've published since the release of the basics and the course packs and the volumes and the pamphlets and the materials, they're all just sitting on shelves. Or they get shipped off to libraries and libraries throw them away. Or they get shipped off to Scientologists who put them in their garages. We know of Scientologists who have 9 or 10 full sets of the basic books and lectures and the ACCs and the congresses, just boxes. Their garages are full of this stuff. They can't give them away fast enough. This has been the case for well over a decade now. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not privy to the daily, production schedule of Bridge at this point. But I don't even know why they're printing anything these days other than maybe brand new versions of the materials where they revise them and got to come up with new stuff. And with the various releases, as we talked about last night, that Scientology is always engaged in this constant, flow of new product that actually isn't new at all. It's just the same regurgitated stuff with a few commas changed or words moved around or something, right? That process, that ongoing thing, is an internally created and demanded production just to keep the Sea Org busy. It's really not. There's no demand for it, I guess, is what I'm saying. So when I look at your question, I think to myself, well, they don't have to lose tax exemption in order for the demand to go down. There already is no demand. They're just producing to produce, just for the sake of it, really. I hope that makes sense. I don't know. It's an odd idea, I guess, but it's just Scientology is just not. It's not in demand, I guess that's kind of my point, right? And so yeah, if they lose their tax exemption, then maybe they will stop, wasting so many resources, as you mentioned. Yeah, fewer trees, right? Yeah, just all the waste that place has engaged in. Scientology is a real paper mill, by the way. I mean, we went through so much paper. For no good reason at all. I don't mean like the worksheets and the documentation. I mean just wasting because, arbitrary demands that we do so. It was pretty crazy. Anyway, get some more questions in the queue, folks, because I have run out of them. And if that's all we're going to do today, then that's, okay. Yeah, exactly. So many of the Scientology lectures are out there. So it's all rather silly. That it is that way, it really is. All right, now I'm gonna check something real fast just to see if it's there. I don't think it is. Oh, it is. Okay, good. Oh no, I'm not tackling that one. Oh yes, but there was this. Okay, let me see if I can throw this up here. Where's... Oh, OBG Foster, I do not see your question in the queue here. In the comment box. Make sure you put your questions under the comment. Ask me anything below this comment here. That's where they go for me to be able to see them. Skip that ad. By the way, I've got all my live streams now set onto... oh, did that come back up? My bad. I did not mean to hit that again. Sorry about that. I've got all my live streams set to conservative. YouTube has 3 settings for how many for the volume of ads that are going to go up during a live stream. They have conservative, balanced, and I think heavy or something, or whatever the big one is. And I've set it all to conservative. So I really hope you guys aren't getting hit too much with ads while we're going along here. Just throwing that out there. All right. Well, cool. So I had, let me see if I can do this. Oh, asked it again. Okay. For some reason, it's not coming up in my question box. That is odd, isn't it? Oh, there they go. Oh my God, suddenly it just did this update and they all dumped in. I do not know why there was a lag on that, but thank you very much for your patience, guys. Suddenly like 20 of them showed up. Okay, great. Let's just carry on down the line. Xian, what would your life have been or be like without LRH or Scientology? I don't know. I just don't know, because it was such a part of my life for so long. My parents would have been divorced. They would have stayed divorced. And so I would have been, I don't know how long it would have been for them to have gotten reconnected or remarried to other people, right? Or what would have happened with me growing up in the 70s as a child of divorce, as well as latchkey kid, of course, in the 70s. So probably, though, I'd probably still be the same basic person, inquiring, reading, constantly having my nose in a book, growing up as a kid. And that would have informed an awful lot of my, continuing life, where I probably would have had the same kind of impulses and desires to engage in movie making and creative arts and writing eventually, which is what I kind of went down the trail of where I was going with my life. Is I was going to be a writer. I wanted to write fiction books. And I sort of tailored my thoughts of my existence around following in the footsteps of like a Stephen King or a Dean Koontz or, a popular good author who could tell, stories. That was kind of my ambition. And I had ideas and I had some story stuff, and I thought this was going to be kind of cool. And then, and then Scientology got hold of me and recruited me as a teenager, and that dream died as I pursued Scientology and decided to save the world instead. So I think I think I probably still would have ended up on a path very similar or like that instead. And that's about as much as I can think about where I would have gone or what I would have been doing. Otherwise, it's just, just me, who, this guy, right? Yeah, I think that's probably the path I would have followed anyway, basically, unless something had acted to, kind of billiard ball me, in some other direction entirely. Maybe I would have met somebody different growing up, or I would have been inspired by some mentor figure in a very different direction. But I don't know that it would have been so different that it wouldn't have had to do with the creative arts and with writing and with my kind of the skills that I just sort of have. And, also, of course, the gift of gab, right? I talk. I talk a lot. And I've always been that way. So maybe I would have gone in that direction. I mean, I could have been a DJ or something, something like that. I mean, who knows, right? I could have gone in all kinds of different directions, but I think it would have been something along those lines. Okay, let's carry on here. Oh, I don't know. This is an interesting question. Jehovah's Witness Apostate asked, did Jon Atack have a freeloader bill after he left Scientology? No, I don't think he did, because he was never a staff member or a Sea Org member. He was only a Scientology public. So no, he would not have had any freeloaders bill because he didn't have anything to, he wasn't a freeloader. He wasn't, that's for staff. If you are a staff member or a Sea Org member of Scientology, and you leave, you stop, you quit before your legal contract is done as a volunteer, then you are charged for the services that Scientology delivered to you for free as a staff member, right? Because you get free stuff, supposedly, kind of. So that's, so Jon was never part of any of that. So he would not have had a freeloader bill. All right, Xen, can you explain what Scientology's meaning of Q&A and what's an anti-Q&A drill? Oh, sure. Absolutely. So Q&A, question and answer, in Scientology has this very specific definition. In fact, I wonder that I couldn't find it real fast for you in the scriptures. So let me see. I've got the dictionaries and everything right here. So let's pull up the... let's try pulling up the Pilot Dictionary. I wonder if it's in here. There's a, there's the Scientology Technical Dictionary, and there's the Scientology Administrative Dictionary, these two big dictionaries. But then there's also this thing called the Pilot Dictionary, which is a compilation of stuff that is not, strictly speaking, just L. Ron Hubbard's writings, where they put together a bunch of definitions of Scientology terms. And Q&A, here we go. Q&A. Oh my God, there's so many definitions in here for Q&A. Holy cow, there's a lot. There's like a full page here on this. Q&A. All right, here we go. From question and answer, in Scientology, a coined expression which means that you did not get an answer to your question, failed to complete something, or deviated from an intended course of action. An auditor who starts a process, just gets it going, gets a new idea because of something the PC says, takes up what the PC says, and abandons the process, is Q&A-ing. Okay? So it's basically not finishing what you started. It's getting distracted. It's bouncing. It's going off in some other direction for any reason whatsoever. Even if it seems like a really good idea and something you really should be doing, you don't do it because it's a Q&A. And this is man's deadliest disease, according to L. Ron Hubbard. He really had a lot to say about Q&A. Oh, yeah, for some reason, they just repeated the same definition like 5 or 6 times in this Pilot Dictionary. That's really weird. Yeah, you didn't get an answer to your question. You failed to complete something, or you just went off of some course of action you were on, right? And it's a really bad thing. So the anti-Q&A drill is a drill you do in order to... cure yourself of this thing that you're doing, right? And let me see if that's in here too, because I don't think I have that. I don't think I have that issue, the Q&A thing available to me here. So I don't remember exactly what the drill, the anti-Q&A drill, consisted of. So let me see if it's in this dictionary here. I'm rapidly paging down through the definitions to see if they have an anti-Q&A definition in here. Jesus, this Pilot Dictionary is 2,400 pages. That's what I'm flipping through right now, looking for this stuff. 2,400 pages of definitions out of Scientology stuff. Jesus Christ. Anti-pathetic. Yeah, anti-pathetic indeed. No. Okay, so that's not there. So let's close that and let's see if there is something in the actual technical dictionary, which I've now got open here, and see if we have anything in here under anti-Q&A. Anti-Q&A TR. Here it is. Perfect. I thought it was in here. Okay, here's the commands. Here's how you resolve somebody who does this bouncy bounce thing all the time, right? Who's constantly deviating from the process commands or the procedure they're supposed to be following. Basically, the command is put that object on my knee, whatever the object is, and you're usually using a book. Student is to get the coach to place the object that he has in his hand on the knee of the student. So you sit across from each other, just like when you do the TRs, you're 3 feet across from each other, kind of knees touching sort of thing. And the purpose of the drill is to train the student in getting a PC to carry out a command using formal communication, but not tone 40. You don't do that whole intention thing, right? You're just using regular conversational voice for this. And you're trying to enable the student to maintain his TRs while giving commands and to train the student to not get upset with the PC under formal auditing. And to get this disease out of an HTC, you got to get auditors to do this anti-Q&A drilling. I am like steeping this answer in Scientology lore or terminology right now. But basically, the anti-Q&A drill, in its simplicity, is sit across from somebody, they got a book in their hand, and you keep telling them, put that book on my knee. And they will do anything but putting that book on your knee. They will play with the book, they'll read the book, they'll ignore the book, they will cajole you, bullbait you, taunt you, tease you, do anything to you, ignore you. And your job is to just keep giving the command. Put that book on my knee. Put that book on my knee. Put that book on my knee. You don't even acknowledge what they say. You just put that book on my knee, right? Put that book on my knee. I guess if I remember right, if they say something that is personal to them as an origination, like, oh, my head hurts, or I don't think I want to do that because I'm not feeling very well right now, then you're supposed to acknowledge that communication. You go, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I understand. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you put that book on my knee? And you go right back to it, right? So you're supposed to be training the person in not Q&Aing, right? Not diverting off or doing something else. That's the anti-Q&A drill. All right, there you go. So let's go back here. Okay. Oh, here's a great question from Xen. Did you watch any of the series Babylon 5? And what did you think of it? Okay. Thanks for asking me this. Yes, I did watch Babylon 5. I watched the first 3 seasons of it before I kind of got sick of it. It was a little too corny for me. The dialogue was a little bit too on the nose. I didn't like Sheridan as a character. I found him annoying and sort of lectury and sort of a little holier than thou in some ways, and just kind of irritating in others. And I know I'm going to rub people the wrong way saying all this stuff. Okay, I know there are people who love this show, and I don't care at all. It's fine with me. You love this show. It's no big deal to me. I don't hate the show, and I don't want the show destroyed. I'm just saying I couldn't really keep going with it. I was told it had this amazing payoff after like season 4 or 5 or something, and I tried, but it just really wasn't doing it for me. So that was Babylon 5. I did find certain aspects of the writing interesting, and it was true that it was a deeper series than it first appears to be. There is more going on under the surface with the show than it appears, but the production values were so bad. I mean, it was distractingly bad. Like it was a show that was produced in the 1990s, but it basically looked and felt an awful lot like the Star Trek from the 60s in terms of its production design and values and stuff like that, right? The set design, the costuming, the spaceships, all that stuff, it was all right. A lot of computer-generated stuff. So I don't know. That was my take on it. I don't mean to be, anyway, it wasn't for me. Let's put it that way. Okay. If you could make one, oh wow, I've got a lot of questions from Xen today. If you could make one rule that everyone had to follow, what rule would you make? Damn, one rule. One rule to rule them all. What shall it be? It's a really tough question. Because I can't assume that the rule will always be followed, right? So I could put a rule there that everybody's supposed to follow, but are they going to, right? I mean, you know, you could put things forward like be kind, or, you know, when in doubt, you know, find out, you know, don't assume, you know, or, you know, what happens when you assume, right? You know, these are great guiding rules, little principles to live by, but people know them, but they don't follow them. I suppose if there was a rule that I could enforce that everyone had to follow, I suppose it would be that before you engage in any sort of decision making or communication or something in anybody's direction of a decision, you know, sort of nature, that you have got to stop and consider the unintended as well as the intended consequences of your actions. Because I think that that's the number one thing that we all fail at so hard. God damn, have I so many times. And I don't think I'm projecting onto everybody else my own personal failings. I think this is a personal failing we all have as human beings, is that we just don't stop and consider the consequences of our actions or our statements or our thoughts or whatever. And it takes us, you know, hours, days, weeks sometimes for it all to sink in. And wouldn't it be nice if there was some way that you could just kind of tune yourself or train yourself into thinking about that stuff so it doesn't take weeks or months for it to all sink in? That you could kind of see where things were going to go because you thought about it first, or you kind of gave it some consideration, or you even talked about it with other people first before you went doing something, you know, kind of silly and off the rails, that we all do, right? There's no preventing conflict, and there's no preventing fumble and stumble and problems and mistakes. You can't. You know, that's what life is. But I think if we could give just a little bit more consideration to, you know, what we're doing, that might be a rule I could put in place that might not itself have horrible unintended consequences, but, you know, who knows, right? All right. Okay, here's an interesting, what's this question here? On OT8, it's revealed that you weren't anything that you learned in the previous levels of Scientology, that you will finally discover who you are on OT9. So is it that all what you learned is BS? Well, see, the things you learn in Scientology are not BS to an OT8. The reactive mind, thetans, bodies, BTs, the experience of having lived in the past up to now, and that you know, affected you, all of that's still true. As I understand it, when you get to OT8, there's some kind of flipping the script on you in terms of your memories of your past events, and somehow maybe a lot of that didn't necessarily happen to you because you were confusing it for what happened to the body thetans that were glommed onto you. Their memories were confused with your memories, and it all got jumbled into this big mess. And then also, referencing what we talked about earlier today, there's also the genetic entities memories. You know, the whole, oh yeah, you know, I should have said this earlier on that whole GE thing. The clam and the, you know, that whole thing about being on the beach and being a clam or being a spore or being, you know, an amoeba, like all that memory that Hubbard talks about from History of Man, those are the genetic entities memories. Those aren't your memories as a thetan, right? That's the GE. And you're confusing those incidents and those memories with your own. You as a thetan weren't on the beach crawling under the sand. That was the GE pushing evolution forward. So those memories are confused for your own. And I believe now this is how I've understood it, and I could be wrong, and I'm willing to be wrong about this, but as I've understood it, When you get to OT8, you kind of have to do this big separation of all of those memories from your memories, and your experiences and memories were not really all of that. And it can become this big jumbled mess. And now that you have gotten rid of all of that, I think the positive spin on OT8 is supposed to be, now that you've gotten rid of all that junk and all those false memories and all that confusion, here you are, just little tiny, boink, little happy thetans. And now you're going to go on to OT9 and start rehabilitating who you really are and what you're really about as a simple spiritual entity with nothing else glommed onto you. That's how I've understood it to be. And if it's different than that, go ahead and clarify that for me, but that's how I've always understood OT8. And it is confusing, and it can, throw people around. I'm somebody who steeped themselves in a lot of Scientology tech and lore and trying to figure it out for years and years and years. Not all Scientologists do that. And there are Scientologists who get all the way up to OT8 who don't know, even a small percentage of all the stuff I know or other trained Scientologists knew about Scientology. And so they get very confused, and it gets very, weird for them at that level. And and they have bad reactions and all that. And I'm not saying that it was, and that it was only their misunderstandings or ignorance that caused OT8 to be a bad experience for them. It's bad no matter what. I'm just trying to differentiate, I guess, knowing about Scientology versus not, and how that can be confusing. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to shut up before I make this even more confusing. Okay. Okay, Jehovah's Witness apostate. When will you start your month-long break from social media? I already did. This week I did. I haven't been on social media for days. No Facebook, Instagram, Discord, Twitter, Reddit, nothing. Not going on any places and commenting or doing anything on anything. Detox time to just get away from all that. And in my personal life as well, right? It's like, I've already declared, some time ago, I've declared my channel like a drama-free zone, right? I'm not here to talk about other ex-members of Scientology or other groups. I'm here to talk about how to help people and how to try to do something about this stuff and how to move on from it, not, sink ourselves into the drama of it all. And that's kind of, and then I sort of extended that into my personal life as well this week with, this social media detox, right? It's just like, get away from it entirely. I don't need to be part of any of that. It's just upsetting and very, very, very distracting to me. And so rather than continue to put myself into as Tony says, right, rather than continuing to put my head into the buzzsaw, right, maybe I could just walk out of the tool shed entirely and go, and go focus on the stuff I really want to be focusing on. And I hope you will see that reflected in this channel. Okay. See what this is here. Anthony Spurgeon. Hey, Anthony. Are you aware of Bob Proctor? He recently died and was a big proponent of the law of attraction. Do you think that stupid idea is the key idea behind destructive cults? You can will changes in life. Okay. Great question, Anthony. I am not familiar with Bob Proctor as such, at least not off the top of my head. Maybe I've heard of him before. But the secret or the law of attraction, let's take a look at this real fast, because it is not the only thing that is going on in cults, but it is pretty prevalent out there, okay? This is very, the law of attraction is very attractive to people. It really is. There's a lot on this thing. I mean, there's even a whole Wikipedia article, which of course I'm going to go to. Is the new thought spiritual belief that positive or negative thoughts bring positive or negative experiences into a person's life. The belief is based on the idea that people and their thoughts are made from pure energy, quote unquote, and that like energy can attract like energy, thereby allowing people to improve their health, wealth, or personal relationships. There is no empirical scientific evidence supporting the law of attraction, and it is widely considered to be pseudoscience, or religion couched in scientific language. This belief has alternative names that have varied in popularity over time, including manifestation and lucky girl syndrome. Okay, so that's what we're talking about when we refer to law of attraction. Okay, and it's magical. It's a kind of magic thinking, right? It's a kind of like, well, if I think the right thoughts, good things will happen to me. Or if I'm thinking all this negativity, bad things, I'm going to pull in, right? This is Scientology expression. In the Scientology world, it's pulling in with energy flows. Remember earlier I mentioned thetans and energy flows. This is how Hubbard says thetans manifest things, is using energy. And so he fit his whole thing with the law of attraction. There's other things going on there too, but law of attraction is pretty core to this. It extends out to many, many other cults and spiritual belief systems and ideas. It's a very broadly accepted, broadly believed concept, although there's lots and lots of terminology and lots and lots of groups for it. They don't all call it law of attraction. I never, ever once heard that as an expression in Scientology. They had other words for it. But it's a wonderful mechanism, you could say. It's a wonderful tool of control to dominate people's minds using law of attraction if you are so, bent to do that. Because it's a perfect blame the victim mentality to crush your members with. If they're not manifesting money or energy or time or whatever it is they're supposed to be manifesting for themselves or the leader or the cult group itself, it's their failing. Well, you're just not thinking the right thoughts. It opens the door immediately to any degree of thought policing that you want to engage in. And you can run people into the ground with this, right? You're not meditating right, or you're not meditating enough. You're not auditing right. You're not thetaning right. You're not, whatever it is you're supposed to be doing, if it's not manifesting in pulling in, the lottery for you, or the new job, or the relationship, or whatever it is that's supposed to be manifesting for you, well, you're just not thinking the right thoughts, are you? Right? And it's all about introverting your attention and directing your criticism toward yourself and never toward anything that's going on around you. And this is sort of the ultimate in introversion and sort of self-trauma, really, self-inflicted trauma. So it's really, it can go to very dark places very quickly if you really buy into this too hard. There is nothing wrong. I always try to say this in pair with this law of attraction thing when it comes up. I always want to tell people there is absolutely nothing wrong with thinking positive thoughts or walking around with a positive attitude. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing to do. Mentally, it's good for your mental health that you have a positive outlook on your life and that you want good things or you're optimistic about things. That's a good place to be. Law of attraction is very different from that. It's an extreme belief that demands your intent and dedication and devotion and this kind of thing. Just having a positive attitude isn't something you really should be having to struggle with all the time, right? But by having a positive or a more positive attitude, or maybe emphasizing positivity over negativity in your life, you give yourself more positive neurochemicals, right? Neurotransmitters and chemicals in your brain kind of flow a little differently, and it more readily engages your frontal lobes and keeps your brain operating at a more rational, non-amygdala driven level, you could say. And that's probably the easiest way to put it, right? It's good for your brain, and it's good for your attitude if you can do that. But that's a way different thing. That's a much lighter grade thing than diving into law of attraction. So anyway, hope I made that clear. Real quick here, yes, OBG Foster, if body thetans are also thetans, can they flit about from person to person through space and time? Yes, they are capable of doing that once they wake up and realize that they're stuck to a body and they need to go off and do their own thing. That's the whole rehabilitation process that you engage in on the OT levels, is you are waking up and rehabilitating these body thetans so that they can indeed flit off and go do their own thing. That's what that's all about. Okay, Young Matador. Tony mentioned on his blog an insider's estimate of ideal orgs. I remember that, costing around $25 million to build and refurbish. How much of this money would come from the Church of Scientology itself, and how much from local whales? Almost all of it comes from local donations from the parishioners. Hardly any of it comes from Church of Scientology International or from reserves, unless it's a flap and a problem and they need to open this org. Like Harlem was paid for that way, I think. The other Inglewood was open this way. I think Kaohsiung, that whole facility in Taiwan, was opened up that way. The church itself paid for it. But most of these 64 ideal orgs that have been opened now, or 65 if we're counting Austin, were paid for by local Scientologists ponying up. They had to pay for the building purchase, and then they had to pay for the building renovation. And it's believed, and we've talked about this in the years ago, that Scientology actually engages in price gouging and gets money. It actually makes money off of the parishioners when they pay for the e-meters and the books and the furniture and all the things that the church produces for the facility. Those are almost all that stuff is produced in-house by the church, even the furniture, to a great degree. And all of that is paid for by the parishioners buying that stuff from the church, right? Those meters don't come free. You got to pay bridge or gold for them, that kind of thing. So as I understand it, I believe the church is actually making money, not paying money out in most of those ideal org situations. Okay, moving on here. Jeremy Dixon. How many books and HCOBs did LRH write? How many lectures did he give? I know that it's all crap, but is it all really necessary for Scientology, or did LRH go a bit overboard? Yeah, he might have gone a little overboard. Okay, we've got something on the order of 24 to 30 books, basic books of Scientology and Dianetics. We have 5,000 plus recorded lectures, if I remember right. When you look at the entire stream of lectures from 1950 all the way through to the 80s. And this is public and private lectures, briefings, that kind of thing, not just Hubbard standing in the dais talking. There were lots and lots of lectures where he was sitting across from somebody talking to one person, right? So you have a few of those. But I think it's something like 5,000 of them, and just thousands and thousands of pages of bulletins in Scientology, those red volumes. I mean, there's just tons of them. So a lot of stuff. And yeah, did Hubbard go overboard? Yeah, yeah, maybe he did. Oh my God, we're already over an hour into this. I promised Mel that we would only go an hour. So let me take a quick look. I'm sorry, guys, I'm not going to be able to get to all your questions here today. So let me take a quick look here and see if there's anything else that I want to make sure that I get answered today that might be cool for you guys. These are some great questions. I want you guys to come back with these. These are some really good ones. Let's see. Okay. Here's a great question, Bo. Do you not see the value or worth of the current protests bringing a ton more WOG eyes on the cult of Scientology? Not to mention the worth of second gens seeking trauma healing from childhood abuses. Sure. Yeah, knock yourselves out. But don't think you're making a big difference in the world of Scientology, or that you're somehow striking some big blow to Scientology, because that's not what's happening, right? But yeah, sure, it's bringing some public exposure. I have yet to see any major media or news articles about this other than the Rolling Stone article. So I don't really know what sort of exposure, if you're talking about TikTok exposure and stuff, okay. Cool. That's better than nothing. I will absolutely say that. I don't have a problem with that, right? I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm saying is be effective at it. Don't be an asshole about it. And walking around on the street yelling obscenities at Sea Org members is just not, it's not okay. It's not right. It's not going to help anybody or anything. And that's not trauma healing. Walking around on a street yelling obscenities at people is not how you deal with trauma. Just go talk to some psychologists about it, right? That's not how it works. So, you know, it might feel great, but okay, great. Knock yourselves out. I'm not telling anybody not to do it. Go knock yourself out. But that's not how you end Scientology. The things that you do to end a cult are not done in front of a camera for the most part, right? We're talking about legislation, public policy, changing the law, in other words, enforcing the law, getting law enforcement or governments on board to prosecute. You know, Alex, for example, is doing some great work on this over in the UK, getting the MPs and government involved in, you know, kind of, what's the word? Decrying Scientology, right? Like actually calling for its investigation at a formal government level is what's on the line right now over in the UK. Like there's really serious good motion forward against the Church of Scientology being forwarded by what Alex is doing out there. And he didn't accomplish that by yelling in the streets outside the House of Parliament. He actually made personal contacts and did the work and provided the data and gave the evidence and got things happening. That's what you do. So, you know, people, I guess, can have something about, oh, Chris is against trauma healing. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. But I don't think going and yelling obscenities at people on the street is trauma healing. So, you know, call that controversial, but that's my take on it. And that's what I can say about that. Okay. And there we go. That's what I wanted to say about that. Okay. Yes. Okay. We're not going to get into anything more on that. Okay, good. So I think with that happy note, I think we'll start wrapping up here today. I want to thank you guys for coming around and answering or giving me those questions. Bo, you're welcome for that. I hope it helped. So on that happy note, let's wrap up. Let's see here. Watch for the show with Alex tomorrow. I'm going to be out of town for the next few days. I'm off social media, like I said, so kind of going to be incognito, I guess. But you will see me back here on Thursday, 1 o'clock Denver time, Mountain Time, for the tone scale video. Oh, okay, let's do this thing. And on that happy note, bye-bye, everybody. Oh, have a great weekend. All of you, right? Thanks for coming around on this. Bye-bye.